O in pirayo artwai hatsatas ivi arwehashu. There are moments in life when strength fails, wisdom runs out, and options disappear. Moments when you realize that human help has limits, but heaven does not. In such moments, prayer is no longer a religious activity. Prayer becomes survival. Prayer becomes breath. Prayer becomes your final and strongest weapon. Hear this truth. Not every prayer changes everything, but there is a prayer that does. Many people pray daily, yet remain the same. Not because prayer is weak, but because prayer must come from understanding, alignment, and surrender. That one prayer is not noise. It is not repetition. It is not desperation alone. It is the prayer where a man or woman finally says, Lord, not my will, but yours. And the moment alignment happens, power is released. History proves this again and again. One prayer shut the mouths of lions. One prayer divided the Red Sea. One prayer brought fire from heaven. One prayer changed a persecutor into a messenger of truth. Why? Because when prayer connects to God's purpose, resistance collapses. That one prayer may not change your environment immediately, but it will change you. It will change your vision. It will change your appetite. It will change your direction. And when you change, everything connected to you must respond. Some doors don't open by effort. Some battles don't end by strategy. Some cycles don't break by intelligence. They respond only to spiritual authority. And spiritual authority is released in prayer. Let me tell you this with clarity. Your destiny is not far. Your breakthrough is not delayed. Your answer is not missing. What is required is one genuine encounter. One prayer that is prayed from the depths of surrender, faith, and obedience. And when that prayer rises, heaven responds. Chains break, patterns end, darkness loses grip, and suddenly what looked impossible bows. So do not give up praying. Do not pray casually. Do not pray without understanding. Because one day, one moment, one prayer will change everything. Prayer at its highest level is not a transaction where humans present requests and wait for results. It is a sacred process of alignment where the heart of a person is brought into harmony with the will, nature, and purposes of God. Many people approach prayer as a spiritual emergency button. Something to press only when pressure rises or options disappear. But true prayer begins long before words are spoken. It begins with a posture of surrender, an inner decision that says God's perspective is superior to personal desire. Until this alignment takes place, prayer often becomes a struggle filled with frustration, delay, and confusion. Not because God is distant, but because the heart praying is not yet positioned correctly. Alignment means that prayer is not centered on what you want, but on who God is and what He desires to accomplish through you. When alignment is missing, prayer sounds like a list of complaints, demands, and explanations. When alignment is present, prayer becomes a conversation shaped by reverence, trust, and submission. This is why two people can pray the same words, they yet experience completely different outcomes. The difference is not vocabulary or volume, it is alignment. Heaven responds to agreement, not desperation. God is not moved by pressure, but by purpose. Many unanswered prayers are not rejected prayers, they are misaligned prayers. A heart that has not yet yielded will unknowingly resist the very answers it is asking for. Prayer is meant to adjust the inner man, to correct vision, to refine motives, and to bring clarity. Before God changes situations, He changes understanding. This is why genuine prayer often feels uncomfortable at first, because it confronts ego, pride, impatience, and self-dependence. Alignment strips prayer of selfish ambition and replaces it with divine intention. When prayer becomes alignment, it stops being about control and starts being about cooperation. Instead of asking God to bless personal plans, the heart begins to ask what God is already blessing. This shift is powerful because it removes friction between heaven and earth. God does not need to be convinced, he needs to be agreed with. Alignment produces rest because the burden of forcing outcomes is removed. The person praying no longer feels the need to manipulate people, rush processes, or panic over timing, because trust has replaced anxiety. This is why the most dangerous prayers are not emotional ones, but aligned ones. An aligned prayer may be quiet, simple, and even brief, yet it carries authority because it flows from understanding. It is possible to pray loudly and remain weak, and it is possible to pray softly and command spiritual force. Alignment gives prayer weight. It gives words substance. It allows heaven to recognize the voice as one speaking from within divine boundaries rather than personal ambition. Alignment also explains why prayer changes the one who prays before it changes circumstances. As the heart aligns, desires are refined. Certain requests fall away, not because they were sinful, but because they were unnecessary. What once seemed urgent loses importance, and what truly matters becomes clear. This is not loss, it is elevation. Prayer was never designed to make God serve human plans, but to make humans partners in divine plans. When alignment is absent, prayer often produces exhaustion. People pray for years and grow tired, not because prayer does not work, but because resistance is created by praying against God's timing or method. Alignment removes this exhaustion. Even while waiting, the heart remains at peace. Waiting no longer feels like delay, but like preparation. Prayer becomes less about asking and more about listening, discerning, and yielding. True alignment in prayer requires honesty. God does not align hearts through pretense. A person must be willing to admit fears, weaknesses, and confusion. Alignment does not mean perfection, it means openness. The moment the heart is open, God begins the work of adjustment. This is why prayer should never be rushed. Alignment takes place in stillness, reflection, and surrender. Words alone cannot achieve it. Posture must support it. Alignment also demands obedience. A praying heart that refuses instruction cannot remain aligned. Prayer loses power when it is disconnected from action. God speaks in prayer not just to comfort, but to correct. Ignoring correction breaks alignment. This is why some prayers feel powerful for a season and then suddenly become dry. The issue is not spiritual attack, but neglected instruction. Alignment must be maintained, not achieved once. When prayer becomes alignment, it also becomes protection. Many battles people face are the result of operating outside divine alignment. Prayer pulls the heart back into safe territory. It reduces unnecessary warfare by keeping the believer within God's design. This does not mean challenges disappear, but it means battles become purposeful rather than chaotic. The person praying begins to recognize when to move, when to wait, when to speak, and when to remain silent. Alignment transforms prayer from a reaction to a lifestyle. Instead of praying because something went wrong, the aligned heart prays to remain positioned. This kind of prayer keeps the spirit sensitive and the mind clear. Decisions become wiser. Discernment increases. The person begins to sense danger before it arrives and opportunity before it becomes obvious. Prayer stops being seasonal and becomes continuous, not always verbal, but always intentional. Come. This is why one aligned prayer can change everything. Not because the prayer was dramatic, but because it brought the heart into agreement with heaven. When alignment happens, divine power flows without resistance. Grace supplies what effort never could. Direction replaces confusion. Peace replaces striving. The person praying may still face challenges, but they face them from a position of clarity rather than chaos, authority rather than fear, confidence rather than desperation, knowing that alignment has placed them within the flow of divine purpose where timing, provision, and outcome are no longer matters of anxiety, but matters of trust and cooperation with a will far greater than personal understanding. Come. One encounter with God has the capacity to rewrite an entire lifetime because spiritual encounters operate beyond the limits of time, effort, and human progression. Life often teaches people to expect change gradually, step by step, year by year, come through hard work, experience, and repetition. While growth is real and process is important, there are moments in the spiritual realm where God interrupts process with encounter. In those moments, what could not be achieved in decades is accomplished in an instant. This is not because effort is useless, but because encounters introduce a higher dimension of transformation that effort alone can never reach. An encounter is not information. Many people know a lot yet remain unchanged. Knowledge can inform behavior, but encounter reshapes identity. When a person truly encounters God, something deeper than habits is touched. Perception changes, conviction awakens, and direction is recalibrated. This is why one moment of genuine encounter can heal wounds that therapy, advice, and time could not fully resolve. Encounters reach places words cannot access. They bypass intellectual defenses and deal directly with the heart. A lifetime is often shaped by a few defining moments. Trauma, rejection, failure, or loss can shape how a person thinks, reacts, and dreams. In the same way, a divine encounter can redefine those internal narratives. When God reveals himself to a person, lies lose credibility. Fear loses authority. Inferiority begins to crumble. The encounter does not always remove memories, but it removes their power. What once controlled the future becomes a testimony of what was overcome. Encounters also correct direction. Many people are sincere but misdirected, passionate but misplaced, hardworking but unaligned. They move fast yet arrive nowhere meaningful. One encounter can redirect a life that was heading toward years of frustration. Direction is more valuable than speed, and encounters bring clarity. In a single moment, priorities are rearranged, values are redefined, and purpose becomes visible. What once seemed important suddenly feels empty, and what once felt distant becomes urgent. Spiritual encounters also release authority. There is a difference between borrowed conviction and personal conviction. Borrowed conviction depends on external motivation. Personal conviction is sustained internally. When someone encounters God, belief moves from theory to certainty. This is why after encounters, people speak differently, stand differently, and pray differently. They are no longer repeating what they heard. They are expressing what they know. Authority flows naturally from encounter because confidence is no longer based on opinion but experience. One encounter can also end cycles that have repeated for generations. Patterns of failure, addiction, limitation, and compromise often persist, not because people want them, but because they lack the spiritual force to break them. Encounters introduce divine power into human weakness. They bring deliverance, not just from behavior, but from underlying bondage. This is why some struggles disappear suddenly, come without long explanations. Once an encounter occurs, the root is addressed, not just the fruit. Encounters change perspective about suffering and waiting. Before encounter, pain feels meaningless and delay feels cruel. After encounter, pain gains context and waiting gains purpose. This does not mean everything becomes easy, but it means everything becomes meaningful. A person who has encountered God may still face difficulty, but they no longer feel abandoned within it. Hope becomes anchored, not emotional. Strength becomes internal, not circumstantial. An encounter can also restore dignity. Many people live beneath their potential because life has convinced them they are small, forgotten, or insignificant. God encounters restore identity. They remind the heart of worth, calling, and value. This restoration is not pride, that it is accuracy. When identity is restored, behavior follows. People stop settling for what contradicts who they are. Standards rise naturally, not because of rules, but because of revelation. Encounters also simplify life. Before encounter, life feels complicated by pressure to prove, compete, impress, and survive. After encounter, focus sharpens. The noise reduces. The heart learns what truly matters. This simplicity brings peace, and peace brings endurance. Many people burn out not because life is too demanding, but because they are carrying what was never assigned to them. Encounters release unnecessary burdens by clarifying assignment. One encounter can also awaken hunger. It may sound strange, but encounters do not satisfy hunger. They increase it in the right way. A person who has truly encountered God desires more depth, more truth, more alignment. This hunger is not desperation. It is attraction. It draws the heart toward growth, discipline, and consistency. Spiritual laziness cannot survive genuine encounter. Desire becomes self-sustaining. Encounters often come unexpectedly, but they are rarely accidental. They are usually preceded by seasons of seeking, pain, questions, or quiet persistence. A person may not recognize the significance of the moment when it happens, but its effects unfold over time. The encounter becomes a reference point the heart returns to during doubt, delay, and difficulty. It becomes an anchor memory that reminds the soul that God is real, present, and involved. This is why one encounter can rewrite a lifetime, not because it answers every question, but because it establishes relationship, not because it removes all struggles, but because it changes how struggles are faced, not because it guarantees ease, but because it secures purpose. When a person encounters God, life may not become simpler on the outside, but it becomes clearer on the inside, and clarity has a way of reshaping decisions, relationships, endurance, and destiny over time in ways that gradual effort alone could never achieve. Prayer activates divine intervention because it invites a higher authority into situations where human ability has reached its limit. There are realms of life where skill, intelligence, connection, and effort can only go so far. And beyond that boundary lies territory that responds only to God. Many people struggle not because they are lazy or ignorant, but because they are facing forces, timings, and dimensions that are greater than human strength. Divine intervention is not God interfering randomly. It is God responding to invitation, alignment, and faith expressed through prayer. Human effort works within natural laws, but divine intervention operates above them. Effort negotiates with probability. Prayer appeals to sovereignty. This is why certain doors remain shut despite preparation, and certain battles persist despite discipline. When prayer is activated correctly, it introduces a superior law into the equation. Come. What was impossible under natural conditions becomes possible under divine authority. This does not cancel wisdom or effort. It completes them. Come. Prayer is the bridge between human limitation and divine sufficiency. Come. Divine intervention becomes necessary when situations are no longer explainable by logic alone. There are delays that are not procedural, oppositions that are not personal, and blockages that are not circumstantial. Come. These realities are often spiritual in nature, even though they manifest physically. Prayer gives access to the unseen realm where these matters originate. It shifts battles from visible symptoms to invisible causes. Come, this is why prayer may not immediately change what the eye see, but it changes what controls what the eye see. Come, prayer activates divine intervention because it establishes legal ground. In the spiritual realm, authority is not exercised arbitrarily. It responds to alignment and permission. God honors human will, that which is why he waits to be invited. Prayer is not convincing God to act, it is authorizing God to intervene. When a person prays in faith, they acknowledge their dependence and submit the situation to divine governance. That act alone changes jurisdiction. What was under human struggle comes under divine oversight. Many people misunderstand divine intervention and assume it means instant miracles without process. Come, while God can act suddenly, intervention often begins subtly. A conversation shifts, a delay occurs, an opportunity appears, a protection is activated. Prayer sets unseen movements in motion that later manifest visibly. This is why prayer requires patience. The activation is immediate, but the manifestation follows divine timing. Prayer is not ineffective because results are delayed, that it is effective precisely because it is working beyond immediate visibility. Divine intervention also brings precision. Human effort often wastes energy because it lacks full information. People fight the wrong battles, push the wrong doors, and invest in the wrong seasons. Prayer invites divine intelligence. God intervenes not only with power, but with wisdom. He reveals what to pursue and what to avoid. Sometimes the greatest intervention is redirection. A prevented mistake is as powerful as a visible miracle. Prayer sharpens discernment, reducing unnecessary losses and repeated cycles. Prayer activates divine intervention by changing spiritual atmosphere. Environments carry spiritual climates shaped by belief, fear, obedience, rebellion, and history. Some atmospheres resist progress regardless of effort. Prayer alters these climates. It introduces light where darkness had influence, peace where chaos dominated, and order where confusion reigned. This shift may not always be dramatic, but it is decisive. Once atmosphere changes, outcomes follow naturally. Divine intervention is often the difference between survival and victory. Human strength may allow a person to endure, but divine intervention empowers them to overcome. Endurance without intervention leads to exhaustion. Prayer releases grace that sustains without draining. It supplies strength that does not come from emotion or adrenaline, but from divine presence. This is why people who pray effectively can carry heavy responsibilities without collapsing internally. Prayer also activates divine intervention by engaging covenant. God is not a distant observer. He is a covenant-keeping God. Prayer reminds the heart of divine promises and aligns expectation with them. When prayer is rooted in truth, it appeals to what God has already committed himself to do. This is not entitlement, it is confidence. Covenant-based prayer carries authority because it is grounded in established agreement, not personal desire. Divine intervention does not always remove opposition, but it neutralizes its power. Some challenges are permitted to refine character, deepen dependence, or prepare capacity. In such cases, prayer does not cancel the process, but ensures victory within it. The intervention may be strength instead of escape, wisdom instead of shortcuts, or endurance instead of ease. These forms of intervention are often overlooked because they are quiet, yet they are transformational. Prayer also activates intervention in areas beyond personal awareness. A person may pray about one issue and find change occurring in another. This is because God sees connections humans cannot see. Prayer hands control to a God who understands the full picture. Intervention then addresses root causes rather than surface symptoms. This prevents temporary relief and produces lasting change. Divine intervention through prayer also restores hope. Hopelessness is often more damaging than the problem itself. When people lose hope, they stop trying, stop believing, and stop discerning opportunity. Prayer reconnects the heart to possibility. It reminds the soul that outcomes are not sealed by current conditions. Hope is not denial of reality. It is trust in a higher reality. Divine intervention begins internally, reawakening courage before altering circumstances. Prayer is also a declaration of trust. Trust invites intervention because it honors God's role as helper, protector, and guide. Self-reliance resists intervention by attempting to control outcomes. Prayer releases control without abandoning responsibility. It acknowledges effort while submitting outcome. This balance is powerful because it keeps the heart active without being anxious. Divine intervention activated through prayer often produces results that cannot be credited to human ability. This protects humility and deepens gratitude. When outcomes clearly exceed effort, faith is strengthened and dependence deepens. Prayer becomes less about crisis management and more about partnership. The heart learns to involve God early rather than as a last resort. Prayer activates divine intervention, not as an emergency option, but as a governing principle. When prayer becomes consistent, intervention becomes familiar. Life is no longer lived reacting to problems, but navigating with guidance. Decisions become proactive rather than defensive. Battles are anticipated rather than surprising. Strength is renewed rather than depleted. In this way, prayer does not merely rescue from trouble, but establishes a life pattern where divine involvement is normal, expected, and woven into every season, creating a rhythm of trust, responsiveness, and sustained victory that extends beyond individual moments into the shaping of an entire journey over time. The effectiveness of prayer is often misunderstood because many people equate power with duration, repetition, or emotional intensity, assuming that the longer and louder the prayer, the greater the impact. While persistence has its place, spiritual power is not measured by time spent speaking, but by depth of connection. Depth refers to sincerity, understanding, faith, and alignment of the heart. A prayer that comes from depth may be brief, even quiet, yet it can carry more authority than hours of words spoken without awareness or conviction. Depth in prayer begins with intention. When a person prays deeply, they are not filling silence with speech. They are engaging consciously with God. There is focus rather than wandering, presence rather than performance. Many long prayers lose power because the heart disengages while the mouth continues. Words keep flowing, but awareness fades. Depth keeps the heart fully present. Even a single sentence prayed with full attention can penetrate the spiritual realm more effectively than many sentences spoken mechanically. Length often becomes a substitute for substance when understanding is missing. People may pray long prayers because they are unsure what truly matters, so they attempt to cover everything. Depth, however, comes from clarity. When the heart understands what it is addressing, prayer becomes precise. Precision carries authority. Just as a skilled surgeon does not need excessive movement to operate effectively, a spiritually aware person does not need excessive words to pray effectively. Depth also involves honesty. Deep prayer does not hide behind religious language or spiritual vocabulary. It speaks truthfully, even when that truth is uncomfortable. God is not impressed by eloquence. He responds to authenticity. Many short prayers in Scripture carried immense power because they were honest responses to real moments. There was no attempt to impress, only a desire to connect. Depth removes pretense and allows vulnerability, and vulnerability creates access. Faith contributes significantly to depth. Faith is not volume or emotional force. It is conviction. A person praying with depth believes what they are saying, even if they say very little. Doubt stretches prayers unnecessarily as the person tries to convince themselves through repetition. Faith simplifies prayer because confidence replaces anxiety. When faith is present, prayer does not need to be long to be strong. Depth in prayer also reflects alignment with God's will. A prayer aligned with divine purpose does not require extended persuasion. Agreement accelerates response. When prayer flows from alignment, it feels settled rather than frantic. There is a sense of rest even while asking. This rest is evidence of depth. Shallow prayer is restless, constantly repeating out of fear of being unheard. Deep prayer trusts that being heard is not the issue, alignment is. Silence plays a critical role in depth. Many people fear silence in prayer and fill it quickly with words. Yet depth often emerges in stillness. Silence allows listening, and listening refines prayer. When a person listens, their words become fewer but more accurate. Depth grows when prayer becomes a dialogue rather than a monologue. Listening reveals what truly needs to be addressed, removing unnecessary speech. Depth is also cultivated through reverence. When prayer loses reverence, it loses weight. Reverence is not fear, but recognition. It is awareness of who is being addressed. When a person approaches prayer casually without consciousness of divine presence, words lose gravity. Depth restores reverence, making even simple words carry significance. A whispered prayer spoken with reverence can shake spiritual structures more than loud words spoken without it. Emotion does not equal depth, though emotion can accompany it. A person may cry, shout, or tremble and still pray shallowly if understanding and alignment are absent. Conversely, a calm prayer can be deeply powerful if it is rooted in conviction and truth. Depth is internal, not expressive. Emotional expression may reflect intensity, but depth reflects foundation. Depth also requires patience. Deep prayer does not rush to conclusions or outcomes. It allows the heart to settle before speaking. This patience prevents reactive prayer, where words are shaped by fear or anger rather than wisdom. Reactive prayer often becomes lengthy because emotions spill without direction. Depth calms emotion and channels it purposefully. Spiritual maturity is revealed in depth, not length. As people grow, their prayers often become shorter but stronger. They learn what to say, when to say it, and when not to speak at all. This is not laziness, it is understanding. Just as a mature leader speaks less but influences more, a mature praying heart speaks less but moves more. Depth in prayer also resists distraction. Come, long prayers are more vulnerable to mental wandering. The longer the prayer, the easier it becomes for the mind to drift. Come, depth anchors attention. Even brief prayers can remain fully engaged from beginning to end. Come, focus intensifies power because the heart and mind operate together rather than separately. Another aspect of depth is humility. Deep prayer recognizes dependence. It does not assume entitlement or superiority. Come, it approaches God with confidence rooted in relationship, not arrogance rooted in assumption. Come, humility removes unnecessary explanation and defense. The heart speaks plainly, trusting God's understanding. Depth is also shaped by consistency outside of prayer moments. A life that reflects obedience, integrity, and attentiveness gives prayer weight. Words spoken in prayer are reinforced by choices made daily. Depth cannot be manufactured in the moment if it is absent in lifestyle. Come, this is why some short prayers carry unusual power. They come from lives already aligned. Come, the power of depth is evident in moments of crisis. When time is limited, there is no opportunity for long prayers. In such moments, depth determines outcome. A single cry from the heart, spoken with faith and alignment, can release immediate intervention. This reveals that power was never in length, but in connection. Depth also protects prayer from becoming ritual. Ritual depends on repetition. Depth depends on relationship. Ritual can continue without awareness. Depth requires presence. When prayer becomes ritual, length increases but life decreases. When prayer remains relational, length becomes irrelevant because connection remains intact. The depth of a prayer is measured by how much of the heart is involved, not how much time is invested. A distracted hour can be weaker than a focused minute. Depth gathers the heart, mind, and will into one direction. This unity produces force. Fragmented prayer lacks impact because the inner being is divided. Depth grows through reflection on truth. When prayer is informed by truth, it becomes accurate. Accuracy increases effectiveness. Long prayers often repeat assumptions. Deep prayers speak revelation. Revelation carries authority because it aligns with reality as God sees it. Depth also creates peace during prayer. When a person prays deeply, anxiety decreases rather than increases. There is a sense of completion even if circumstances remain unchanged. This peace is evidence that the prayer touched something real. Shallow prayer often ends with more worry because it did not reach depth. Understanding that power lies in depth frees people from pressure. They no longer feel obligated to perform or compare. Prayer becomes sincere rather than competitive. This sincerity opens the heart further, creating even greater depth. A prayer rooted in depth does not need to be extended to be effective. It does not rely on repetition to gain attention. It speaks once clearly from a heart that knows whom it is speaking to and why. Such prayer moves beyond noise into authority, beyond effort into grace, beyond words into alignment, shaping outcomes through connection rather than volume, influence rather than duration, substance rather than size. Prayer changes the one who prays before it changes anything around them, because prayer is first an internal work before it becomes an external force. Many people approach prayer expecting immediate shifts in circumstances, relationships, finances, or outcomes. Yet the deepest and most lasting impact of prayer happens within the human heart. Prayer is not merely a tool to influence events. It is a process that reshapes perception, character, desire, and sensitivity. When prayer begins to work internally, it prepares the person to carry whatever change is coming without being destroyed by it. The first change prayer produces is awareness. In prayer, distractions fade and the heart becomes more conscious of truth, motives, and realities that were previously ignored. A person may enter prayer convinced that the problem is external, only to discover that fear, pride, impatience, or misunderstanding has been shaping their reactions. Prayer creates space for reflection that daily noise often suppresses. This awareness is not condemnation, it is illumination. It allows the person to see clearly rather than react emotionally. And clarity itself is a powerful transformation. Prayer also changes perspective. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to appear smaller when viewed through a larger lens. This does not minimize pain or difficulty, but it reframes them. Prayer introduces eternity into temporary struggles. When perspective shifts, desperation reduces. The same problem may still exist, but it no longer dominates the inner world. The heart becomes steadier, less reactive, more grounded. That this inner stability often determines whether external change will be sustainable when it arrives. Another internal change prayer brings is humility. In prayer, self-sufficiency is confronted. The act of praying is an admission of dependence, even when unspoken. Over time, this dependence softens arrogance and reduces the need to control everything. Humility gained in prayer is not weakness, that it is accuracy. It aligns a person with reality, acknowledging limits while trusting divine sufficiency. This humility makes the person teachable, correctable, and adaptable, qualities that directly influence future outcomes. Prayer also reshapes desire. What a person wants before prayer is often different from what they want after prayer. As the heart stays in God's presence, shallow desires lose their grip and deeper longings surface. This is why persistent prayer often leads to change the requests. The person stops asking for quick relief and begins seeking lasting transformation. This internal shift protects them from receiving things they are not ready to manage and prepares them to steward what truly matters. Fear is another area prayer transforms. Fear thrives in isolation and uncertainty. Prayer interrupts both. By bringing concerns into the presence of God, fear loses its secrecy. It is exposed to truth. Over time, courage develops, not necessarily because circumstances improve, but because trust deepens. A praying heart learns that even if outcomes are delayed, it is not abandoned. This assurance strengthens emotional resilience and prevents panic-driven decisions that often worsen situations. Prayer also trains patience. In a world shaped by speed and instant gratification, patience feels unnatural. Prayer slows the inner rhythm. It teaches waiting without anxiety and expectation without entitlement. This patience is not passive. It is active trust. It allows timing to unfold without forcing outcomes. Many external problems persist because people rush processes they were meant to mature through. Prayer develops the capacity to wait without weakening. The inner change prayer produces also affects how people relate to others. As prayer softens the heart, compassion increases. Harsh judgments fade. Understanding replaces resentment. This does not mean boundaries disappear, but reactions become wiser. Many conflicts resolve not because others change, but because the praying person responds differently. Prayer breaks the cycle of offense by healing internal wounds that previously shaped reactions. Prayer also purifies motivation. A person may pursue good things for unhealthy reasons such as validation, comparison, or fear of failure. Prayer exposes these motives gently but clearly. As motives are purified, calm actions become more effective. Effort is no longer fueled by insecurity but by purpose. This inner alignment often produces external favor, not because effort increases, but because effort becomes accurate. Another internal transformation prayer brings is discipline. Consistent prayer strengthens self-control. Come, not through pressure, but through desire. As the heart grows closer to God, certain behaviors naturally lose appeal. This is not forced change, it is organic. The person finds it easier to resist what once controlled them, not because temptation vanished, but because affection shifted. Prayer does not always remove temptation, but it reduces its influence. Prayer also strengthens identity. Many people struggle because they are unsure of who they are. External circumstances then define self-worth. Prayer anchors identity beyond performance and success. In God's presence, the heart is reminded of value that does not fluctuate with outcomes. This stable identity produces confidence that is calm rather than loud. Such confidence affects decisions, boundaries, calm and endurance. The change prayer produces internally also sharpens discernment. The person becomes more sensitive to timing, atmosphere, and direction. They sense when to speak and when to remain silent, when to move and when to pause. This discernment reduces unnecessary mistakes. It is not mystical. It is clarity developed through consistent alignment. Prayer also heals internal fragmentation. Many people live divided lives, torn between beliefs and actions, desires and responsibilities. Prayer brings integration. It aligns thoughts, emotions, and intentions. This internal unity produces peace. When inner conflict reduces, external pressure becomes easier to manage. A united heart moves with strength. Another significant change prayer brings is gratitude. As the heart becomes more aware of God's involvement, appreciation grows. Gratitude shifts focus from what is missing to what is present. This shift does not ignore problems. It strengthens resilience. Grateful hearts endure better, think clearer, and respond wiser. Prayer changes the inner narrative. Instead of interpreting life through fear or failure, the person begins to interpret it through trust and purpose. Language changes, thoughts change, expectations change. This internal narrative shapes behavior more than circumstances ever could. Prayer also reduces the need for validation. As the heart becomes rooted, external approval loses control. The person becomes less driven by applause and less devastated by criticism. This freedom allows authentic living. Decisions become values-based rather than approval-based. The internal change prayer produces often precedes external change because inner readiness matters. Without internal transformation, external blessings can become burdens. Prayer prepares the container before releasing the content. It strengthens capacity before increasing responsibility. Even when circumstances remain unchanged, the praying person is not the same. They are calmer, clearer, stronger, and more anchored. This inner shift is not always visible, but it is decisive. It determines how future opportunities are handled and how challenges are faced. Prayer does not begin by fixing the world. It begins by shaping the heart that must live in that world. As the heart is shaped, strengthened, refined, and aligned, the person becomes capable of carrying change without losing peace, power without losing humility, and progress without losing purpose. Consistency in prayer gives birth to sudden breakthroughs because spiritual outcomes often emerge from processes that are invisible before they become undeniable. Many people misunderstand breakthroughs and assume they are random events or rewards for a single intense moment. But in reality, most sudden shifts are the result of sustained alignment over time. Consistency builds spiritual momentum quietly, layer by layer, until a threshold is crossed and change manifests rapidly. What looks sudden to observers is usually the overflow of accumulated obedience, faith, and persistence. Prayer works like cultivation rather than magic. Seeds are planted, roots grow underground, and nothing visible seems to happen for a long time. During this hidden phase, consistency is doing its deepest work. Each prayer reinforces trust, sharpens discernment, and strengthens alignment. Even when emotions fluctuate or results are delayed, consistent prayer continues to shape the spiritual environment. Breakthroughs occur when what has been forming internally and invisibly finally reaches the surface. Many people quit praying because they measure effectiveness by immediate feedback. Consistency challenges this mindset by training the heart to trust process over sensation. Prayer is not wasted when nothing seems to change. It is invested. Every consistent moment of prayer builds familiarity with God's presence and sensitivity to His guidance. Over time, this sensitivity allows a person to respond accurately to opportunities they would have otherwise missed. Breakthroughs often arrive disguised as decisions, conversations, or timing-sensitive moments, and only a consistently praying heart recognizes them. Consistency also stabilizes faith. Faith that depends on emotion is unreliable, but faith built through routine becomes resilient. When prayer becomes habitual rather than occasional, belief no longer rises and falls with circumstances. This steadiness is crucial because instability delays breakthroughs. Doubt introduces interference, but consistency reinforces confidence. A stable heart can carry increasing spiritual pressure without collapsing, and pressure often precedes release. Another reason consistency produces sudden breakthroughs is that it wears down resistance. Some obstacles are not removed by force, but by persistence. Prayer applies pressure without exhaustion. It does not argue loudly, it insists quietly. Over time, resistance weakens, not because it was attacked aggressively, but because it was outlasted. What seemed immovable eventually gives way, not gradually, but suddenly. When the resistance can no longer hold, consistency also spiritual authority. Authority grows through repetition, obedience and faithfulness. A person who prays consistently develops credibility in the spiritual realm. This authority is not visible, but it is real. When breakthrough finally comes, it comes with force because authority has already been established. Sudden breakthroughs are often moments when accumulated authority is finally expressed outwardly. Prayer consistency also refines timing. Many delays are not denials but protections. Consistent prayer aligns a person with divine timing, reducing premature movement. Rushing ahead can delay outcomes further, but consistency keeps the heart synchronized. When timing aligns, progress accelerates rapidly. This acceleration feels sudden because preparation happened gradually. Consistency ensures that when the moment arrives, hesitation does not delay obedience. Another dimension of consistency is endurance. Endurance builds capacity. Without capacity, sudden change can overwhelm. Consistent prayer strengthens emotional, mental, and spiritual endurance. It expands the inner framework so that when breakthrough arrives, it can be sustained Many people experience temporary success because they lack the internal strength to maintain it. Consistency prevents this collapse by preparing the inner life for external expansion. Consistency also eliminates spiritual noise. Inconsistent prayer creates confusion because direction changes frequently. Consistency clarifies focus. Over time, distractions lose influence and purpose sharpens. This clarity is essential for breakthroughs because confusion causes missed opportunities. Sudden breakthroughs often happen when clarity meets opportunity. Consistency ensures clarity is already present. Prayer consistency also builds trust. Trust grows through repeated interaction. The more consistently a person prays, the more familiar God's voice becomes. This familiarity reduces fear and hesitation. When instruction comes, obedience is quicker. Breakthroughs often require swift response. Delayed obedience can close windows of opportunity. Consistency trains responsiveness. Many sudden breakthroughs occur after long seasons of apparent stagnation. These seasons are not empty, they are formative. Consistent prayer during quiet seasons deepens roots. Shallow roots produce unstable growth, but deep roots support rapid expansion. When growth finally begins, it appears sudden because the foundation was already established. Consistency ensures that growth does not collapse under its own weight. Consistency also confronts discouragement. Discouragement is one of the greatest enemies of breakthrough. It convinces people to stop just before release. Consistent prayer weakens discouragement by anchoring the heart beyond immediate results. Even when emotions fluctuate, routine carries the person forward. Breakthroughs often occur shortly after the point where quitting felt justified. Consistency keeps the person present for the moment of release. Prayer consistency also builds alignment between belief and behavior. Inconsistency creates contradiction, weakening spiritual force. Consistency unifies intention and action. This unity produces momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reduces resistance. When momentum reaches a certain level, change accelerates. Sudden breakthroughs are often momentum finally overcoming inertia. Another reason consistency leads to sudden breakthroughs is that it changes the environment around a person. Consistent prayer influences atmosphere, relationships, and perception. Over time, doors open, opposition shifts, and favor increases. These changes often go unnoticed individually, but collectively they create conditions ripe for breakthrough. When conditions align, outcomes change rapidly. Consistency also reveals faithfulness. Faithfulness attracts trust. When a person is faithful in prayer during silence, they are prepared to steward answers during abundance. Breakthroughs are not only about receiving, they are about managing. Consistency proves readiness. When readiness meets opportunity, release happens swiftly. Prayer consistency also protects the heart during waiting. Waiting without prayer breeds frustration. But waiting with prayer produces maturity. This maturity prevents bitterness and impatience from sabotaging outcomes. When breakthrough arrives, the heart is positioned to respond with gratitude rather than entitlement. Sudden breakthroughs often feel surprising because people underestimate what consistency has been doing. They remember the waiting but forget the forming. Yet every consistent prayer added strength, clarity, authority, endurance, and alignment. The breakthrough did not come from nowhere. It emerged from accumulated faithfulness. Consistency transforms prayer from an event into a lifestyle. When prayer becomes woven into daily life, spiritual flow becomes continuous. This continuity eliminates sharp gaps between effort and outcome. When the breakthrough finally manifests, it does so with speed and decisiveness because resistance has already been weakened and alignment firmly established. What appears sudden is usually the visible moment of an invisible journey. Consistent prayer prepares the ground, strengthens the roots, aligns the heart, and establishes authority. When the moment arrives, change happens quickly, not because the work just began, but because it has been happening faithfully all along. In the end, prayer is not a ritual meant to fill time or a habit reserved for desperate moments. It is a divine pathway through which lives are reshaped, destinies are redirected, and impossible situations brought to higher authority. One prayer prayed in alignment, can open the door to an encounter that rewrites years of struggle. Through prayer, divine intervention is activated where human strength fails, depth replaces empty repetition, and the one who prays is transformed before circumstances ever change. Consistency then seals the process, quietly building spiritual momentum until what has been forming in the unseen suddenly breaks into the visible. That this is the mystery and the power of prayer. It aligns the heart, awakens heaven's involvement, strengthens the inner man, and prepares the soul to carry breakthrough without collapse. When prayer becomes sincere, deep, and consistent, it stops being something we do and becomes who we are. And in that place, change is no longer a question of if, but when.